Ladies and gents, welcome. I'm Tyler, or TFitX. I am a certified personal trainer, a registered nurse, and also a YouTuber, I guess, sort of. And today we're going to be talking about how to cut fat or lose fat without losing muscle, how to be as efficient as possible in a cut phase or in a caloric deficit. So I put together some talking points and topics to cover, and we're going to base this mostly off of I'm about to start a cut phase or fat loss phase myself. We're going to cover exactly what I'm doing. You can apply some of these principles. So topics to cover are going to be my calories and how I'm adjusting my macros like protein and whatnot, what exercise I'm going to be doing, what cardio I'm going to be doing, how I'm going to track my progress, and also the mental part of a fat loss phase because it's hard. It's not meant to be easy. If it was easy, everyone would be lean and shredded year round. Now, currently to set kind of the background, I am sitting at about 199 pounds. I'm 5'9". My goal is to get down to around 190, and hopefully those 9 pounds I lose is all fat, and I want to maintain as much muscle as possible. My max duration for this is going to be about 10 weeks. If I get to 10 weeks and I'm not at my goal, totally fine. I'm going to take a bit of a break. So first, here's some of my weight trends over the last month and year. So on the left, we've got my entire year. And you're going to see these kind of peaks and valleys here. And so I started the year, I was coming into the year, started on a cut, got down, started about 207, got down to 197, went on a big bulk phase here and went all the way up to 211 in about 3 or 4 months. And I will admit, my weight gain here, it was too fast. I got a little bit too greedy with the bulk, and although I saw a lot of muscle gains and strength gains, I've learned a lot from this, and going forward, I'm very excited to be able to kind of repeat this process, do it much more efficiently. Then went on kind of a slower cut throughout the year. I was kind of running more in a maintenance phase here, but was losing weight at the same time. Went on a mini bulk for about a month, and then we went on a cut. And then now this is going to be just my last month, and my weight has actually stayed pretty similar. I've kind of jumped up and down. I've actually been in a bulk the last month, but what I realized was what I thought my maintenance calories were actually higher than I thought they were, which is great. That means my metabolism is at a much better spot. So I've been at about 3,200 calories and I've been maintaining my weight. I thought previously my maintenance calories were around 3,000. Maintenance calories are the amount of calories you need to eat with your normal amount of activity, so your normal exercise activity, to maintain your weight. If you don't know where this is, it is a good idea to figure this out, and you can do this simply by tracking your calories through an app like MyFitnessPal. There's many other apps out there as well. And do this for a few weeks and just eat what you normally do, and as long as your weight is staying relatively the same, that's probably a good idea of what your maintenance is. So to start, in the first 3 weeks of my cut, I'm going to be dropping down 500 calories. So it'll put me at about 2,700 calories. Now, why 500? Well, 500 times 7 is 3,500 calories. That's the deficit I'll be in for the entire week. And 3,500 calories equals about a pound. So if I do this, I should lose roughly 1 pound per week. Remember, my goal was to lose 9 pounds in 10 weeks, which should give me plenty of runway to do that. The absolute most amount of weight you should be losing is about 1 to 2% of your total body weight. So if you weighed 200 pounds, the most you should be losing is 2 to 4 pounds per week. And I would say the closer you get to that 2% number, so 4 pounds if you weigh 200, the more likely you are to lose muscle in the process. If you want to do this efficiently and not lose any muscle, it is very important that we kind of go nice and steady with this and we don't just plummet our calories and starve ourselves. Now, it is important to know that in the first 2 weeks of a cut, it is very common that you have a little bit more weight loss, but that is mainly due to the water weight that you're losing and because of depleting glycogen stores. And we're going to talk about a little bit more about glycogen here in a moment. Now, there is this fancy phenomenon called metabolic adaptation, and it is a very important mechanism that our bodies have because it is what has allowed us to survive in periods of starvation and famine and whatnot. Because when your body is not getting enough calories for an extended period of time, your body will adapt and it will slow down its own metabolism in various mechanisms so that we don't starve ourselves and die, basically. So to account for this, I'm going to be every 3 weeks, I'm going to drop my calories an additional 200 more. So in weeks 4 to 6, we'll get down to 2,500. Weeks 7 to 9 or 7 to 10, basically, we'll drop down to 2,300 calories. However, if I start to feel very low energy, if my what I'm doing in the gym, I'm feeling weak, I just don't feel good, I'm gonna have what's called a refeed day where I bump my calories back up an additional 200 to 500 calories, kind of depending on how I feel, for 2 to 3 days at a time. What this is going to do is I'm not going to put myself back in a calorie surplus where I'm going to gain weight or anything, but it's going to be enough to start replenishing those glycogen stores, kind of fill up my muscles and give you a little bit of a metabolism boost. So glycogen is what your muscles store as fuel, and glycogen holds a lot of water. And so when you are eating at maintenance or in a calorie surplus, your muscles should be filled up nice and well. They should be nice and plump with plenty of water and glycogen. That gives you a lot of energy to have good workouts and whatnot. But as we are consistently in a calorie deficit, your body has to use up this glycogen, and it will actually make your muscles look flatter. So that is one kind of hard mental component of a cut, is that as we are doing this, is you're going to be like, man, I'm losing my muscle. I look skinny, but I still have fat, and you start playing these mind games. But in reality, if you were to just kind of refeed yourself for a few days, fill that glycogen back up, your muscles will fill back up, and you're gonna be like, oh man, I look great. Let's now break down what my macros look like. So protein, carbs, and fats are your macros. Currently, I am at 3,215 calories, which is 390 carbs, 95 grams of fat, and 200 grams of protein. Again, I weigh right about 200, so that's why I'm eating 200 grams of protein, because it's 1 gram per pound of protein, which is basically the most amount of protein we would need to really optimize any muscle gains. During a cut, it is even more important to keep our protein very high. So if you eat less than 1 gram of protein per pound, I would say in a cut, you really want to make sure you push it up to 1 gram of protein per pound of your goal body weight. I'm going to mostly be dropping my calories from carbohydrates. So I'm going to drop my fat just a little bit early on. I personally find that when I start get lower than 90 grams of fat or so, I just don't feel as good. My energy isn't as good. So I like to keep it there. It's a pretty moderate amount, but I will take basically all of my calories away from carbs. And then as we get past the first 3 weeks, when I continue to drop calories more, I will definitely be keeping protein the same at 200 the entire time, but my carbs will continue to be the primary source of where I pull calories away from, and a little bit of fats. It is very possible at the end I might get my fats down around like the 75, 80 gram mark. As far as food choices go, I'm gonna be very big on lean protein sources so that I'm hitting that protein goal. That is probably the most important thing during this. I will be replacing some fattier things for leaner options like whole eggs with egg whites, maybe instead of, less fattier cuts of meat with some leaner ones. And if on one day my fats are lower and my carbs are higher, that's fine. I'm not going to be super particular about where my carbs and fats are. I am much more concerned about my protein and my calories at the end of the day. That is way more important than getting to the nitty gritty of worrying exactly where your carbs and fats are. And then as far as carbohydrate sources, I'm going to want to be going after very high fiber sources, because that's going to be very high satiety, or it's going to give you that effect of feeling full. So lots of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, things like that. Definitely avoiding sugars and anything processed. Exercise wise, I've currently been on a 4-day split, which is an upper lower split. So day 1 and 3, Monday, Thursday, I do chest, back, and shoulders. Day 2 and 4, or Tuesday, Friday, I hit legs, and then also my arms, biceps, and triceps. Now, the reason I do this is because it's beneficial to hit multiple muscle groups multiple times per week, because studies have simply shown that you're better to spread that volume up over at least 2 days instead of doing, all of your chest workout in just 1 day. During my cut though, I'm actually going to reduce my training volume from a 4-day split to a 3-day full body routine. The reason I'm doing full body, again, is that same principle. So I'm hitting those muscle groups multiple times per week. But why am I cutting my volume back? Why am I doing less in a cut? Most people think, oh, during a cut, if you want to lose weight, you need to do more activity. And yes, that can be true, but when you're in a caloric deficit, that is not the time to push harder. If you are not supplying your body with the resources and nutrients it needs to build muscle, there's no point you are at a very high risk of overtraining. So it actually makes more sense to slightly dial back things. Also though, I am actually myself particularly wanting to start focusing on improving my running and cardio during this cut phase. So I am pulling some volume away from my lifting so I can add volume into my running. Now for my pure, let's maintain as much muscle as possible, I would not recommend this. I would just say keep your lifting volume roughly the same. And we're going to focus on just mostly your calories and some increasing activity, which we'll talk about here in a moment. I also want to mention that if you are lifting 3 days per week, I highly recommend you do a full body split over a standard push-pull legs, because again, we are hitting each muscle group multiple times per week. And especially when we are in a caloric deficit, it is a lot easier to recover from less volume spread out. So for example, if I do 3 sets of chest 3 days a week versus me just crushing my chest in 1 day with like 9 to 12 exercises, I feel like I recover much better with that kind of spread out volume. Now, this might be a little bit hard to see and read here, but this is my exercise I've planned out here. I'm not gonna get in the nitty gritty of this, but just to give you a rough idea, I wouldn't say this workout is ideal for everyone. Some of this is very catered to some specific goals that I have. I'm also incorporating a lot of mobility work into my sessions, but you will see that my reps are generally a little bit higher, mostly in that like 12 to 15 range. The reason for that is I just find it that when I'm in a caloric deficit, it's easier to do higher reps rather than push for heavier weights, because as my cardio and endurance gets better, just because I'm doing more activity, that those endurance type exercises tend to be a little bit easier. So when I do it this way, it feels like I'm not losing as much strength, versus if I'm lifting very heavy and I'm in a caloric deficit, then I'm like, oh, I really feel, less strong. You'll also notice for the rest, what I'm doing is I am supersetting every 2 exercise. So it says SS1, SS1. This means superset for each one. So what I do is on exercise 1, I rest about 30 seconds, and then I do the second exercise. And then after the second exercise, I rest about a minute, and then I go back to exercise 1. For the most part, each superset are opposite muscles. They're never the same muscle group. I don't superset biceps with biceps or chest with chest. The reason for this is this makes my workout more efficient and I can get through more time, but it's gonna be a little bit harder from a cardio perspective, which again is something I'm wanting to focus on personally during this, is improving that. And we touched on this a little bit already, but as far as my intensity, it's gonna be hard. I'm gonna lift hard, but I'm not gonna be all out lifting like I would be if I was in a caloric surplus. Again, it's very, very hard to gain muscle when you're in a deficit. Usually only kind of like more beginners, people like that are gonna be able to do that. When you are strength training in a deficit, the purpose of this is simply to send a signal to the body that we need this muscle, that we're using it, and that we need to keep it and retain it. That we're telling the body, go burn the fat. We don't need that. We need to keep this muscle. As far as my progressive overload principles, normally when I'm in a maintenance or bulk phase, I'm going to be aiming to go up every week in all of my lifts by adding a rep or adding 5 pounds each week. But in a cut, I'm going to do that, but aim for about every other week, or maybe just maintain it. If I can get through this and just maintain and do the same amount of volume and reps and weights I was doing at the beginning, then that is great. That means I didn't lose any muscle for sure, and that we are feeling good. And if I can't maintain, if I'm feeling weaker one day, that's when I'm going to be like, okay, it's time for a refeed day. We bump our calories a little bit. Now, it is to be expected when you're in a calorie deficit for a prolonged time, you will get weaker. That doesn't necessarily mean you're losing muscle, because it might just be, oh, you feed yourself well for a few days or a few weeks, and then bam, you've got that strength back. And it wasn't actually because you lost muscle, it's just because you were systemically fatigued from this prolonged deficit. As far as cardio goes, if your goal was maximum muscle preservation, meaning you wanted to keep as much muscle and not risk burning any, I actually really wouldn't recommend doing a whole bunch of cardio. I would just say focus on increasing your activity through things like your step count. This is called NEAT, or non-exercise activity thermogenesis. This is doing chores, going up and down the steps, taking the trash out, whatever that may be, or just walking. And so generally I would say if you're in a fat loss phase, I would say aiming anywhere between 8,000 to 12,000 steps daily is a great place to be. If you do want to do cardio though, nothing wrong with doing cardio during a fat loss phase. You just generally want to keep it low intensity, or what we call LISS, low intensity steady state cardio. And that is going to be in the forms of things like biking, incline walk, a very light jog if you're pretty good at jogging and running already, the elliptical, the Stairmaster, etc. Usually these are going to be around 30-minute sessions. You really would not want to do these much longer, definitely no longer than an hour or so. And the goal for what makes this low intensity is if you can hold a conversation during this and talk to someone. So you're not like having to be like, yeah, how's your day? That's too much intensity. You should be able to basically hold a conversation. And so for a heart rate perspective, this is going to look about 50 to 65% of our maximum heart rate. So that's going to be mostly zone 1 to the low end of zone 2, if you're familiar with zone 1 and zone 2 training. Now, what I'm going to be planning on doing is I'm just going to aim for 10K steps on average daily. So if some days I'm low, I hit 8K, that's fine. The next day I'll aim for a little bit more in 12K. I just want to average out to be around 10K steps. I'm going to be doing cardio 3 times weekly. And again, this is because I want to get better at cardio. I want to improve my endurance because it's something I don't work on a lot. So 2 of those days are going to be lifts, which will probably be mostly incline walking or biking, or I also have a sled where I can put weights on and push it. Those will probably be the main times. I might do some very, very light jogs as I get better at running, but at least 1 day per week is going to be an actual run. And it's either going to be a HIIT style, a run walk interval, or I'm just going to do a 1 mile all out because I just want to get better at running. I want to increase my VO2 max and improve my skill at running and my cardiovascular endurance, which is why I'm doing that. But that specifically, I would not say is the best possible idea if you want to really burn as much fat with maintaining as muscle. I am putting myself at risk by doing this to burn some more muscle potentially. Now, how do we track our progress? Well, the easiest thing is just to weigh ourselves. So I'm going to be weighing myself daily. I've got an app on my phone that connects it, so it's nice to see trends and stuff like that. But I'm going to be focusing on the weekly average and not so much my day-to-day weight, because your weight can fluctuate a lot up and down. You could be having, and what's funny is what will often happen is you'll be like 3-4 days, you're super consistent, you're right where your calories need to be, your weight doesn't budge or even goes up, but then you actually have kind of a cheat day, maybe a refeed day, and then all of a sudden your weight drops. So the body does funny things like this. So just focus more on your averages and don't hyper focus on your day-to-day weight. When you do weigh, you want to weigh yourself first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. That way it is the most consistent. I'm also going to be doing weekly progress pictures. I'm going to take these same thing, first thing in the morning, empty stomach. I'll do front, side, to rear. I'll do flexing and non-flexing as a contrast. Then I'm also going to be doing a weekly waist circumference measurement because that's kind of my main area where I'm wanting to lose some weight is I want to get some of my abs start popping out. So that is a good kind of just gauge to add and just have some more info. Here is a good reference of what to do for progress photos. Set them up, take them at the same angle, same height, just front, side, rear. This is obviously not flexing, then this is flexing. And then, but this is, remember, this is gonna be very different if you have a pump post-workout versus these are taken first thing in the morning. So just keep that in mind because you can do some interesting stuff and trick people that you made great progress just by doing a no pump versus pump progress picture. What about mindset? So when you're in a calorie deficit, your energy is gonna be low. You're not gonna be feeling just like amazing on top of the world. You're not going to feel as strong. You're going to be hungry. Those are part of being a deficit. It is a little bit hard, but none of these should be to the point to where you are super irritable. Your energy is so off that you can't even sleep or your quality of sleep is bad. You can't recover or you're getting injured, even to the point if your libido is crashing. And so basically, yes, it's meant to be hard, but it shouldn't be miserable by any means. And if you are feeling miserable, you need to probably reverse out and go the other direction. You can always take a break. You don't have to commit to 12 weeks or 6 months of doing a cut. You can do these shorter cycles. You can bring calories back to maintenance for a little bit. You can drop your volume and intensity of your workouts. One thing that's a great idea for some people is doing mini cuts where you go 3 weeks in a deficit, you bring back to your maintenance for a week or so, and then you kind of just keep repeating that so you're not in it for too long. Now, if you're really struggling with the low calorie part specifically, you might be better off to reverse diet first. I've got a whole video on the channel covering that exactly. And basically, if you ask yourself and you're like, do I have the room to drop my calories up to 1,000 more from what I'm currently at? Is that sustainable? And if your maintenance calories are 2,000 to the low 2,000s, and you like imagine, like, could I eat 1,200 calories a day for several weeks at a time? I would never recommend anyone drop their calories less than about 1,500 for the most part. That's like the lowest I would take anyone. So that's when reverse dieting can be a much, much better idea. And the good thing is about me is because my maintenance is so high around 3,200 calories, I don't think this is gonna be all that bad. Like the last few weeks might be a little bit hard, but this should be pretty smooth sailing because I've set myself up for a lot of success. Now, if you're wondering, like, I don't even know where to start, or if you've been trying to do this and you've been struggling to reach your goals or feel unsure of where to start, hiring a personal trainer coach is hands down going to be the best investment you can do. I did it several years ago. It was the best thing I ever did. That's why I've recently become a certified personal trainer and I've been helping people do exactly this, what we've been talking about. So having someone to help formulate a plan and structure everything for you, because my cut is not going to be the same as your cut. Helping you troubleshoot problems as you go when you have, injuries or life happens. How do you change the plan and whatnot? And just having someone there to hold you accountable and encourage you along the way can be a complete game changer. So if you're at all interested, I have a link in the video description where you can apply for online coaching, totally free. You'll get a free one-on-one call with me where I can just assess, provide some totally free support, even if you decide that this isn't for you. And we can see if you're a good fit to work one-on-one through coaching. And if you're not sure, if you just have quick questions, shoot me a DM on Instagram, which is tfit.x. But guys, I hope you found this video helpful. Check out my reverse dieting video that I talked about, because a lot of you, I think that's probably where you should be starting and not jumping right into a cut. And let me know of any future video topics you'd like to see me cover, but I appreciate you guys, and we'll see you in the next one.